Green beans were really hard to grow in 2022 for a lot of people. If you were like me and you found your summer to be really hot and really dry, much more so than normal, then you may have noticed that your green bean production also suffered. For the first time since I started my garden 10 years ago, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get enough green bean harvest to carry our family year round. That's always been my goal for green beans, and from the very first year I started gardening, I was able to achieve that goal. Well, this year, midway through the season, I started noticing that this may be a problem. My pole beans aren't producing very well, and I'm even struggling with some of my bush beans. So how can I get a green bean harvest to be able to actually fulfill my goals? Well, I wanted to share with you what I did because it was a last-minute decision, one I'm so glad that I made. And while we all hope that we never have a hot summer like we had this year, again, chances are we probably will. And so I wanted to share with you what I did this year so that way maybe you can have an idea that you can turn to in future seasons to make sure that you get the green bean harvest that you want as well. So for 10 years, I've been a grower of pole beans. Pole beans have done best for me, even though they will kind of stop production in the heat. Typically, they resume production in late August, early September, when the temperatures start cooling down just a bit. But this year I was noticing that even my pole beans were struggling. I did plant an early planting of jade bush beans, which they're my favorite bush beans. I planted them in my ground bed, but I also planted some in my Greenstalk planter. The ones in my ground bed looked really promising, but they ended up getting assaulted by insects. That planting was pretty much a fail because I didn't get anything out of that planting, sadly. I was really grateful though when I planted the jade bush beans in my Greenstalk leaf planter. I did that last year and it worked really well as a supplement to my pole beans, and so I did it again this year, and that planting actually did pretty well. The problem is that I planted it in mid-May, which is about a month after our average last frost date. I waited till my spring Greenstalk lettuces and stuff like that until they were done, and then I planted the jade bush beans. The problem was planting them in mid-May meant that they were starting to flower in the heat. I love how I can move my Greenstalk into the shade, and I was able to get them out of the shade. But still, when you're talking about 100-degree temperatures, even in the shade and watering sometimes twice a day is a little bit too much. Still, I was able to get, I would say, about 6 to 7 pints of canned green beans from that planting in the Greenstalk. Now, after that was done, I was actually just going to wait until my fall crop to plant some fall crops in the Greenstalk. But seeing that my pole beans weren't producing and my bush bean planting was a complete fail, I decided last minute to plant another planting of jade bush beans in the Greenstalk. My hope was that I could be able to get at least enough of a green bean harvest to to maybe get close to my goal for the year, and hopefully by doing it then I could also get it harvested and out so I could still have time to plant my fall crops in the Greenstalk, because that's when I love growing in the Greenstalk the most, is in the fall and in the spring. So I planted on July the 12th. I took my previous green beans out. I refreshed the soil a little bit. I added a little bit of fertilizer, and then I planted the new planting of jade bush beans on July 12th. And right away in that warm soil, they sprouted. I was able to water them, and thankfully in August, the temperature started to break. So right around the time that those bush beans started flowering, we actually had relatively normal temperatures in the low 90s, which is usually okay for your beans to be able to flower and produce. Well, I was absolutely shocked when my bush beans started producing about 5.5 weeks after planting. That is crazy. So they were able to go from seed to harvest in 5.5 weeks, and then I was actually able to get the entire planting harvested in about 6 weeks. What this did is it allowed me to get an extra planting of the bush beans and get them harvested and still have time to plant my fall crops in the Greenstalk. But more than that, the yield in this later planting actually was so much higher. I was able to get about 10 to 11 pints of green beans canned from that second planting in the Greenstalk. So overall, I was able to get, I would say, about 17 or 18 pints of green beans from 2 plantings in the Greenstalk this summer. And that almost put me at my goal. Thankfully, I did have some green beans that I was able to supplement in my garden. It wasn't a complete fail, but almost all of my green beans this year came from the Greenstalk planter. I just used it for 2 plantings, one in the main part of the summer and one in the later part of the summer. I can't tell you how grateful I am that I did that, because now I can go into the fall and winter knowing that we have enough green beans to last our family all year. Also, growing in the Greenstalk is just enjoyable. You have less problem with pests. They're not absent, but they definitely are much less. And then you're able to get them harvested and get them out in time for fall. So I just wanted to share with you this technique that I tried on a whim this year that ended up producing and doing so well for me that I'm definitely going to keep it in mind for the future. So whether you have a summer that is really hot, or whether you just don't have a lot of space, or maybe you have a Greenstalk that you know does really well in the spring and in the fall, but you're looking for summer crops to kind of fill that gap, I hope that this video has been helpful for you to give you some ideas on how to get more out of your Greenstalk using these bush beans in the Greenstalk planter. For more videos like this, be sure and like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.